freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here at episode 130, we have joining us Chris Guerrero. He's Vice President of Marketing at ENGIE Resources, where we talk about his work with Starship at Shell, the three main positions in the energy space, and green hushing. Quite interesting. He also talks about his love of storytelling, why it is important to share good stories, and what is keeping him confident during the energy transition. Today we have joining us Chris Guerrero. Chris is the VP of Marketing at ENGIE Resources, and we're going to learn what that is and what he does here in a couple of minutes. But welcome. Thanks for joining me today, Chris.
Thanks so much, Mike. It is a pleasure to join you and to have our paths cross yet again in a slightly different space, but still, oddly enough, connected to transportation and energy. So here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I started this 3 or 4 years ago, I wanted it to be a conversation that was like relaxing and comfortable, and so we called it Mike Roth and Friends. I mean, it's got a longer name with that, but you have to be a friend to be a guest. And that served us really well because it makes the conversation richer and better, and we know each other coming in. So, welcome, my friend. And but you have to help me figure out. Do you remember how we first met and kind of what drove us to become friends?
Starship, if I remember correctly. So in a previous life, when I was working with Shell, working on the Shell Rotella brand in the US and globally, yeah, we had this wild notion of seeing what we could do to improve fuel economy performance for Class 8 trucks here in the US, with the idea being that nothing isn't the answer, right? There's something you can do. And so it was a fairly practical approach, working with Bob Sliwa, who had a background in kind of hyperfuel efficiency, testing things out as a driver, to say, okay, what if we put technology on an existing truck and try to optimize the way we drive and the way we operate that truck, and let's see what we can do. So, and in the course of that, we had the chance to connect with you guys because we wanted an impartial view in that space on what we were doing,
Yeah.
and thus our relationship began. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, there was uh, an announcement, or the first of that was a press event in Louisville where Bob Slywa and you and others were there. I brought my wife. I think we wedding crashed that. I don't think you guys invited us, but I think we just showed up. My wife, over 15 years, most people listening that maybe met her or have had me talk about her, but she came to probably 100 to 150 industry events with me over the last 15 years. And this is a true story, Chris. We were at an event, and maybe it was either at the distillery in Louisville or maybe in Texas somewhere, whatever. She goes, "Who's that guy?" And I said, "Well, that's Chris Guerrero." And she goes, "Let me be clear, Mike. If he invites you to anything, anywhere in the world, we are going."
Oh man, that is a beautiful story. Yeah, and we were blessed to have had her joining us for a few of those events. Yeah.
Didn't we do something at Texas A&M and we went to
Yes, we did.
H.W. Bush's library? She thought that night was, just like really nice to be able to mix business with fun and social, but also at a place that, had history and had some point about it. I mean, you get all those things together. It was a great night.
Yeah, they have an amazing transportation institute there at Texas A&M where they do a whole lot of work and research in this space. I think we even got to see how they program traffic lights. So they confirmed that it's not intentional that I catch every red light, right? Uh, there's a little more technology than just making sure I'm miserable involved in it. And to your point, what a fantastic backdrop that was with the George W. Bush Presidential Library there. It's an amazing place.
Tell us about your career, kind of what brought you into this space, and what kept you in it. And let's just talk about, how you got to this point.
Mine is an unexpected tale. I think if you had asked me when I was in my 20s, coming out of I went to actually Texas A&M University, graduating from there, I never could have predicted that this would be the path that I had. Right, so I graduated degree in mechanical engineering, and I promptly went to work for a company called Texaco in commercial lubricant sales. Yeah, so my work with oils started back then. Through that, I had the opportunity to join with Shell. I was with Shell for over 25 years. And I spent a lot of time working in the transport sector, right? So, fleets, owner operators, And man, I had a chance for 13 years to work globally with that same group of folks around the world. And what I realize is there's a commonality to that industry. It is a beautiful, hardworking industry, good people. To your point about being able to get together, being able to learn, being able to share stories, being able to work hard and have fun. I mean, to me, that encapsulates that space. And from an early time in that space, I was fascinated with this notion of how do we make things better? Yeah. That led ultimately to what we started doing with the Starship project to say,
Mhm.
how can we reduce consumption of fuel where possible through sensible things, right? Which then led me into that next step for a bit with Shell over on the Shell Energy side, as they were trying to stand up their presence on the retail power side and the renewable power generation side in the U.S. I had a chance to step over there. It was a natural progression when you think about energy being the driving force to enable change and kind of evolution for humans throughout the course of history, right? And I absolutely loved it, right? And I had the chance in kind of in the course of doing that to get approached by ENGIE. And they said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming and joining us and stand up the marketing organization for our U.S. business?" They're the fifth largest supplier of retail energy to B2B businesses in the US, which is amazing. Yeah, which is amazing because the brand that I was working with was number 8. But I told them at the time, I was like, "You have an amazing story that hasn't been told yet." And I love telling stories. So I said, that appeals to me. But the other thing that appeals to me is being squarely in the midst of what I think is one of the most exciting and slightly terrifying at times industries going around right now, which is that energy infrastructure and power side. It is a
Yeah.
challenge that isn't going away. So I kind of kicked the tires, did some checking. One thing you'll find, much like the transport industry, the power business is also very familial, very interconnected. So folks know folks. So I asked around, they asked around. It ended up being a love match. I was able to come over. I told the CEO at the time when I talked to her, Anne-Laure Chassagnit is our CNO. I told her, look, there's lots of people you can hire for a job. That's fine. I said, the ecosystem matters. You take a penguin and you put it in flight school, it's going to fail horribly. You take a penguin, you put it in swim school, it's going to be your valedictorian, right? So it's important that this penguin finds its right place. I said I don't like just watering the plants. If you want someone to figure stuff out, if you want someone to kind of crack problems and solve puzzles, that's what I like doing. I like building things. I like making impact. She said, "This is what we want. We want to stand it up." And so about a month later, I told her, "You didn't lie." And maybe I didn't know what I was talking about when I asked for this because we have a lot of opportunity, right? So we
Yeah.
kind of reorganized the team, built it, and now I have a fantastic team in place, and we're ready to roll this year, tackling these ongoing issues around demand exceeding capacity. And we'll talk about that in a bit in the context of transport.
My experience has been that trucking is very proud and oftentimes actually too modest. It just like give us the challenge, whether it's COVID or just moving goods in difficult times, and we get her done. We figure it out. From the fleets to the manufacturers with things like emissions problems or challenges and so forth, and we do that without a lot of pomp and circumstance. And there's a lot of studies, that are out there that trucking is looked at as just in the way, a problem. We don't really appreciate that it gets us all the goods we both need and want. And I think as we're going through some of this transition things that we'll get into, I'm not sure that modesty serves us all that well. I think because I don't know. It just does that make any sense to you? Is that logical?
No,
And
it
do you have any
does.
thoughts around it?
I think one, it speaks to the nature, the values, the ethos of this industry in that it is blue collar, it is no flash and dash, it is substance, right?
Yeah.
To your point, it is show us the problem and we'll get on it and figure out how to make it work, right? Um, and to that end, that usually means that the industry is so busy making it work that they don't take time to tell people how they're making it work. The other truth, I think, Mike, is um, humans take for granted infrastructure. We assume it's the natural, happy assumption of continued infrastructure. We just assume it's going to work because it has worked. And I don't really want to know how it works as long as it works. During any natural disaster as well, you look at a hurricane area, right? These are moments when infrastructure that has been taken for granted and professions which are taken for granted shine, right? Because all of a sudden the absence of them has a direct impact on your life. And so you'll see moments where the spotlight shines on transportation and fleets and the great work that they do. And then it quietly goes back in the background, right? Do I think it's to the industry's detriment? Yeah, I do. Look, back to being a storyteller. Inherently, I believe good stories should be told, right?
Mhm.
That natural assumption of optimism. I was blessed to be able to travel around the world and see lots of different countries and lots of different trucking communities. And I used to come back and I tell my two boys, one, you're blessed to be here, right? This is a great place to be. This country provides opportunity that is hard to find anywhere else in the world. But the other thing I would tell them is the vast majority of folks want to work hard and they want to leave a better life for their kids than what they had. And being able to tell those stories and help people see them, that's not calling undue attention to ourselves. That's helping reinforce that positive view that says, hey, this place isn't so bad. Folks aren't so bad. We are not so different like we think. And if this is a canvas on which we can tell that story and paint that picture, then let us not hold back. Let us shine the
Right.
light on the good work being done, man.
Yeah, we also need to be open and interested in new things. So let me ask you, and this is very specific. I mean, when you took that new energy role, kind of what was going through your head? I mean, Shell's a old traditional oil and gas company, and here you're supposed to help look at the future. So how did you approach that, and what do you look back on as successful? And I don't know if you want to share any challenges or failures, but nothing that, it's up to you. But that's like a real world example of what a lot of us are going through.
For me, it was exciting. Part of what you can see are the trend lines. I tell my boys that there are times in life where want doesn't enter into it. In other words, what you want is largely immaterial to what's coming. So you better get ready for it. If you look in this space and you look at power, right, whether it's renewable or whether it is kind of traditional legacy power supply, the need for it is going to increase. And boy, has that come true. I mean, you see it accelerating. We'll talk about that some more in a bit. But having that space carved out within a company the size and the scale of Shell was a huge opportunity because there was already an established 20 years of presence on the trading side. This was them really trying to move into a power generation space and connecting directly with customers, which I love. The B2B space. And what I have found, Mike, is I don't know that whether it's within Shell or whether it's outside of Shell, I don't know that any company has it perfectly right in what I would call the three basic positions of the energy space, which is generation, transmission, and trading, and then kind of the retail bit, because the economics are also different and there are trade-offs, right? But it was a wonderful, wonderful place to get a taste for that industry to begin working in it. And so what went well was being able to again tell a story that converged with the story I had been telling around being more efficient in how we utilize the resources that we have, or that we won't have long term. You will continue to see, I think, companies try to balance the expectations of their shareholders and their investors with their ability to deliver a return that they expect. And so when you're in a company like a Shell or a BP, you have a whole lot of different ways that you make money and that you deliver value to society. And the big drivers of that historically, when times are good, you have more latitude for the exploratory areas. And when constraints come up and you're challenged and you have to drive a lot of return, you tend to lean back into the comfort zone of what it is that got you there.
Well,
Right.
there's that plus, the some people call it legacy or traditional. Those companies, they're supplying the stuff we need right now that to survive. So in the trucking, I do a lot more work in trucking than I do in energy, but in the trucking world, you've got these six traditional heavy duty OEMs, from Freightliner to International and on and on. And they need to keep building trucks to move
Yep.
goods, or we're going to be hungry and naked, as a friend of mine says. So so that's got to take place. Whereas a Tesla or another newbie, all they need to focus on is the future,
That's right.
and that is hugely different. And each has their challenges. The new kid on the block, I mean, who the hell are they? Are they going to have parts and service? Is the truck going to work? Or yada yada yada. But they don't have the encumbrances of continuing to build a product. And so, yeah, what goes in your mind when you think about that? I mean, I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to have both, but
Yeah.
boy,
I think it begs the question, can one place do it all? I think historically what we've seen is it's very hard. Whether it is, to your point, really good example around truck manufacturers and Tesla and auto manufacturers, right? Historically, we would say that it's really hard for them to do it. Why? Because for us to continue operating in the way that we have and deliver the returns that are expected, you can't take your eye off the ball of what is a full-time job of what you do. The new developments, the kind of next generation, man, unless you have a whole lot of discipline, you can firewall it off from the short-term demands that you're faced with, and you can kind of invest long-term in that space. It's going to be real hard not to look at that when times get hard and say, well, if we cut that, we could save a bit of money, increase our return on average capital employed, and look better, right? So I don't know. I don't know that anyone's done it well in pivoting to that next open space. I mean, specific to my situation, moving into with NG Resources got 95,000 employees worldwide, operates in 30 countries. All they do is power. There's a benefit to that because then you can become expert within that space in a way that you can't necessarily do when you also have fuels and lubricants and polymers and chemicals and
Yeah.
these competing interests internally, right? So I don't know if anyone's going to figure that out. I think this model of having competing areas is good for us.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in play here. Of course, I mean, there's the historic, what's the solution in the long term? What are some bridge things that might go on in between? All these things have pretty big capital investments related to them,
Huge.
and so it doesn't take much. I mean, we'll probably all be wrong. It's a matter of the survivors. The survivors will be those that are less wrong than everybody else. I mean, because you got to hit that S curve just right with your investments and your resources and your solutions. What keeps you confident, and how do you help your team when things get kind of tough around all these transitions and what we're talking about? How do we keep the momentum exciting, strong, and forward looking?
Yeah, I mean, I think you work the problem. I used to get back to the old engineering view that says, let's focus on the practical. Let's focus on not letting perfect be the enemy of good. Look, I've said this. If we had talked about this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you'd hear the same thing from me. In that, look, there's no magic bullets, guys. What there are sensible trade-offs. If you're educated around the trade-offs, then you make good decisions in the now. To your point about trying to be predictive, the most accurate prediction that we can make is that we're going to be wrong about whatever prediction we make. But if you can understand kind of the potential pathways and the trade-offs for it, you see it in transport right now, Mike. I mean, you see it with electrification, you see it with the exploration of hydrogen, you see it with kind of traditional fossil fuels. We've talked about it. You need all of them for this to work right now at this moment in time. And then where you move to from this, it's going to depend. EV, which seemed like, hey, is that a magic bullet? And this is the convergence between my old job and the new job is, hey, you know what? If the grid can't handle the load, it doesn't matter if you can produce the vehicle and the theory of charging exists. If I can't get an interconnection and I can't serve that load to where I need it, well, I'm stuck with a truck with a dead battery. It's funny because I tell my guys this when we put together the team and we interview is I inherently love people who like sorting problems. And if that's what drives you, then you don't get daunted by the challenge because it kind of jazzes you up to sit there and say, I think Walt Disney said it best. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. So what can we do?
Yeah, yeah. I think hold on loosely to what you know and what your plans are. Adjust. I think there's an interesting bunch of solutions that are going to emerge. Grab a hold of one and run with it. I think Let me ask you another question. I'm finding, and I don't know if it has to do with political environment or we're in a bit of a freight recession, so I continue to see a lot of struggles, bankruptcies, layoffs, etc. So there's like this moment now where everybody's kind of quiet and private and not wanting to talk. I don't know what that is completely. But one thing I've learned in this space over the last 4 or 5 years is it's going to take an incredible amount of collaboration. And that's been 40 years in trucking. I've liked that we can come together and the truck OEMs and the fleets and the customer, the suppliers and regulators, we can come together and work on, like we said earlier, we can get to the good. But it just feels like right now, I don't know, we're in a time where there's maybe it's a lot of uncertainty and people don't want to look stupid or they don't want to share their cards or whatever. But at a time where we need much more collaboration, I'm feeling like there's too many people going to their own little hole in the ground and trying to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's the long blade of grass that gets cut kind of syndrome, right? So I don't want to stick up. I
Yeah.
don't wanna be sitting out here. It's funny because from time to time you do kind of market surveys and you figure out sentiment. And there was a time where you heard the terminology greenwashing, where people would be
Yeah.
accused of being sustainable through actions that perhaps didn't match up. The terminology that's starting to get introduced now is green hushing, which is what exactly the phenomenon that you're talking about, which is this pullback, this reticence to talk about what's being done. And I agree. I think within transport and much larger within the context of the energy transition, we got to talk because that's the only way we're going to sort out the problems, right? So silence
Exactly.
is not the right answer here, right? We have got to be
Yeah.
really open about what's working, and we got to be super open about what ain't working if we're going to fix this.
No, I totally agree. And I've been trying to use tactics around that, just like saying exactly that. We need all of the help and support. It's not like you're per day, you stepping out as that tall blade of grass as you were talking about. I mean, and maybe you are, but I think that's something we got to admit and just move on from. And then maybe this idea of holding on loosely to what we think we know, and that way we can adjust our and so we don't, we may not be that long blade of grass because we're changing and shifting our points and our positions and our efforts. Might be some good advice here.
Yeah, I mean, I think history bears out that those companies that are successful long term are the ones who aren't reticent about
Yeah.
engaging and having that conversation and exploring what's next to maximize the options they have moving forward. I mean, again, this is how we manage change as best we can, and with options and mitigations of risk. And you can't do that if you're just locked down and siloed off.
Part of that is, admitting when you're wrong or when you weren't completely right and just adjusting and moving on. So I think maybe that's the nugget we're coming to here, Chris. So, hey, we always run out of time fast. We have a lot of people that listen to this that are new to trucking, or maybe they're old to trucking. They're thinking about, energy transitions, but also just how do we do better with fewer resources. So just like, let's just close this out by you kind of, what's a couple pieces of advice you'd give us all in the day-to-day efforts of making this happen?
Irregardless of your industry, if you're operating facilities in the US right now, you have to be mindful of the current situation of power, supply, and demand. Keep your eye on the ball when it comes to the supply agreements that you have, because things are changing fast and they're going to change faster. Demand is expected to rise faster than any time in the last 20 years. Everyone's heard about data centers. Electrification of transport weighs into that as well. Industrial onshoring weighs into it. Retiring assets from old equipment that's coming offline. It means that right now we're on the edge of a time where we're going to have to juggle our ability to generate power with the demand that we have for that power in the marketplace. And for the listeners out here, what that means is the way you used to think about your power supply contracts for your facilities or for your EV charging equipment is changing. Right. It used to be a bit lowest price, set, forget, renew it, keep your options open. What you're seeing with some of the weather conditions that we have in the Northeast with Winter Storm Fern that just went through right now is you see these moments where you could have high levels of exposure on your cost for energy that you didn't anticipate. So it's more important than ever to stay aware of it, stay curious, like we talked about, Mike.
And not all of this electricity demand is similar. Some of it's very different. We can, and that's a good thing because now we can sort of manage that charging in our world, or just like, that supply and demand. I mean, one thing that goes through my mind a lot is we've been built for this. I mean, we've been using data and data analysis, as well as, variable this and that and the other. We now have tools that if we were trying to do this 10 or 20 years ago, no way we could. But now let's admit that we're ready for this, and let's go get her done. Right, Chris?
That's it. 100%.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, my friend. This has been fun, and good luck in your work at ENGIE.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be with you again. Look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Rosen Friends.